How many people find us on Google, call us, talk to my intake and sales person for 12 minutes and sign a digital retainer that they've looked at for 35 seconds. If you can be the first one who shows up, and if you can just not fumble the ball, there's a good chunk of clients who will hire you just on that without ever having looked at your website.
Sure. Strategies, sweet success. Thank you, everyone, for being with me today. Today, I have Brian Glass with me. Brian is an attorney, coach, implementer, influencer, husband, and a father. I first met Brian in 2018 when he started at Ben Glass Law, and I was low key scared of him. And maybe we'll talk about that later. Um, we worked together on Ben Glass Law's leadership team for a few short years before I left Ben Glass Law. And since then, he's taken over both Ben Glass Law and Great Legal Marketing. And we were just talking before the podcast about how both were just doing really great and everything was changing and everything's new and exciting. So, welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Yeah, like what else can I take over? And I have, I don't know, I have that effect on employees. A little key scared from. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. If you stick around long enough, it really works out. Um, but yeah, I have heard that feedback before.
So I guess the funny thing that I'll say is because I read your LinkedIn content is I was low key scared of you because you just didn't say very much. You were very quiet, and I could tell like you were listening, and so I just never knew what the hell you were thinking, and that was
Mhm.
kind of terrifying. And then later, I'm reading your LinkedIn post, and I'm like, "That's a freaking strategy he has to seem smarter." So it's kind of angry when I read that.
So I think it's not necessarily to seem smarter, but it is a leadership strategy, right? If you're
Yeah.
in a meeting, you really need to try to be the last one to talk. Because how the hell else are you ever going to let your other leaders develop? And how are you going to scale your firm beyond you if you're always the one kind of shouting commands from the top of the mountain? And also, I pride myself on I don't talk about things I don't know about. I don't talk about things I haven't done. And so that leads to me being quiet most of the time.
I wish I had that kind of natural gift just to be quiet. My big toxic trait is I look to jump in a little bit too quickly. So that's definitely something I've had to work on personally.
Mm.
So I listed a whole bunch of things that you were right now, and I follow you on social media, and so I get to see part of it. Like how do you keep up with all this? Like how do you keep up with both businesses, family, all that stuff?
Poorly, poorly.
Oh,
We're here's what I have to keep reminding myself is that there are certain things, everything in your life has a season and a window of time in which you can do it, right? And I have kids now that are 11, 9, and 6, and there is a small window where I can coach their youth sports teams, right? So you have to prioritize getting out of the office at 4 o'clock to go coach soccer and baseball in that window. And my 11-year-old, we were just at a travel tournament this weekend, and I coach his regular team. He was guest playing on a higher level team. And I'm watching these kids and they're amazing. And I could never coach him to be that good. And so even within the window of like you can coach your kids, they age out of your skill level pretty quickly. And so as you're prioritizing the things that you want to do in your life, like there's always time to come back and make more money, right? My kids will be out of the house in 12 years, I'll be 53. From 53 to 65, if I wanted to make a whole lot more money, I could work a whole lot harder and make more money. Um, so that's one thing is recognizing the seasons and the small windows and the vanishing time horizons that you have to do these things. The other thing is, there's this Derek Sivers um, phrase or quote or heuristic of like hell yes or no, right? And I think too many people early in their career use that as a way to not do things that challenge you. And the idea is if it's an opportunity that is not a hell yes for me, I'm just going to say no to it. Um, and and you go through these windows where you say yes to a lot of things, and then you kind of end up where I am now, where like the schedule is packed and you've got to say no to things. And it's hard to turn back on the no muscle because you're afraid that the opportunity is not going to come back up. It will always come back up. So you ask, how do I prioritize it? I don't know. Poorly, not as well as I should. The beginning of the year, one of the things that I do, sit down and I write out all the things I want to do that year, and those go on the calendar first. So like sports schedules go on the calendar first, vacation goes on the calendar first. Trials happen to be there, and then everything else gets shuffled in around that, or it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that. I mean, it's definitely something that I felt in my life because I have my daughter who's 14 and the youngest one who's 3. And I just know all too well, like how quickly all that goes by and finding the time to do it. Cause now my daughter doesn't care to, do all the fun stuff with mom. She wants to do fun stuff with friends. And so you're right. There's a small window of that.
And then come back, right? I mean, there will be a period in the 20s when she wants to come and hang out with you again. But yeah, taking advantage of it while the window is open, because you're never going to get those years back.
No. Although I will say she opened the door here just a second ago, so she probably needs money, so she still comes to me for that. I did have a question because I was genuinely curious. What did you learn about marketing when you started at Ben Glass Law and like started seeing what we were doing at Great Legal Marketing?
I think how hard it is, right? So the firm that I was at, we the first 10 years of my career as an injury lawyer were spent at a firm where, at least when I started, 75% of our client base was Korean speaking, right? So my boss and then partner had this niche in the Korean American community, and he was one of, I don't know, 4 or 5 options for somebody who speaks Korean primarily. And so you don't have to be amazing at marketing, right? You just have to be in the right spaces, and you have to develop relationships with doctors and primarily chiropractors who were referring us those cases. And so things like SEO didn't matter. We weren't running any paid ads. LSAs weren't a thing yet. And so what I brought over when I came to Ben Glass was the relationship marketing with doctors, because I had learned how to do that. Um, and and came over, we were doing primarily, newsletter based, keeping your herd marketing, and you were handling the digital SEO and pay per click. And again, LSAs were not a thing, I don't think, in 2019. Um, and I'm much more deeply involved in the digital right now, and it is complex, and maybe that's a function of we're now in 2024. Maybe it's a function of I just didn't know before, but technical SEO is like really, really, really hard. Um, so that's one of the things I've learned. I think the market though has really shifted since 19, right? So all of our historic auto accident marketing was that Dan Kennedy style: reach out and request some information. We'll send you some information. You'll read the book. We'll follow up with you. If you're a big case, you'll become a client. Like, that's not the case anymore, right? Speed to lead. And it's, if you haven't solved their problem within 15 minutes of being on the phone call, they're on to the next lawyer. So that has changed, and we've had to adapt the whole intake and sales sequence to state of the market in 2024. It's a little bit different on the long-term disability side because there aren't very many options, and because there is kind of a slower, like, we actually have to evaluate your case and look at your denial letter. But on the PI side, it's like, were you in a crash that wasn't your fault and you've had some medical care and you don't have a lawyer right now? Okay, we'll take it. So that's been an evolution.
I mean, so I mean the ebook thing and the direct to lead thing, I mean, that's something I've definitely focused on here of late because it's obvious to me, like looking at the data of some of the clients I work with, like the ones that sign the most cases aren't always necessarily the ones getting the most leads, but they're the ones like more
Mhm.
ruthless about intakes and how fast
Mhm.
they follow up and how much coverage they have like 24/7.
Two things that have made the biggest difference in our new case signups this year have been bringing intake back in-house and from an offshore position and having lead docket and having a fully built out follow-up sequence with text and email and reminders to the person who's in that seat to pick up the damn phone to call somebody, you know? So like many law firms, we had gone through this evolution of, okay, there's a receptionist who does the initial intake and sets up a call with the lawyer to, okay, now there's a paralegal in the section who's a little bit more of a subject matter expert who's doing that to, well, we can't afford a full-time in-house American to do the job. So we're going to go overseas and we'll find a staffer or VA to answer the phone. And then finally up to this level of like, hey, we have a full-time staff member in-house answering the phone who can run screaming down the hallway like her hair's on fire if a good case is on the phone, right? And every step of that iteration, we trapped a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more of the qualified leads that we wanted, right? And the move from overseas to in-house took our qualified leads signed percentage from like somewhere between 60 and 65 to about 89 this year. And so with no additional marketing spend and a marginal increase in what we're spending on the person in the seat, we've signed 50% more cases this year than we did last year.
Yeah, I think in general, law firms just really underestimate how important the phone intake process is. And when I talk to law firms that are kind of in that stage where they have a receptionist answering their phones and doing intakes, they're a lot of times they're asking for more leads, but necessarily not more leads wouldn't necessarily help because there's just such a huge, issue with dealing with that volume of calls and how do we process them. And also, frankly, taking somebody whose primary job was reception and transforming it into like a very sales heavy role. And, some people just aren't ready to make that transition. They're meant to be, receptionists or EAs. Um, so it's definitely like that move from the receptionist answers the phone to having an intake team is just so important, I think, for a lot of law firms.
Well, and how do you get more leads, right? There's not an inexpensive way to quickly get more leads. SEO takes time. We're currently paying $400 to generate a phone call from Google. And a lot of those are junk. And we don't play in the PPC space, but I just saw another vendor's benchmarking data that PI firms in mid markets, major markets are spending $800 to generate a conversion, right? And so there is no cheap way to make the phone ring more often. That's really any less expensive than just hire somebody who's really good at selling your firm and figuring out, can we solve that person's problem or not?
I have a few more questions. So this is another one I'm genuinely curious about because you have kids that are, well, kind of in between, but roughly about my kids' ages. What are you telling them about college and what degrees to look for?
Nothing. Nothing. That's a fantastic question. So I'll tell you, we have 529 plans for the kids. We've been investing in it dutifully. I think it's, depending on what they want to do. If you want to go into business somewhere that's law firm or law firm adjacent, except if you want to be a lawyer, you would be better off if I took the money out of the college fund, let you work for free for one of my friends for 4 years and paid you a living stipend, right? That would be more valuable to you than a 4-year college degree. If you could learn from an entrepreneur who's running a successful business, how to run a successful business, you could learn kind of the meta learning of learning, you can find all the information that you want on YouTube and on podcasts and in books, right? And so in a way, I think if you're not pursuing ultimately a professional degree, the 4-year college is like a safe place to park you where you can't get in too much trouble for 4 years. But I don't think it's, what's a 4-year tuition now? $150,000 before living expenses? Like what a waste of money.
Now, and I know so many people who started college and didn't finish because they just couldn't find something that they were passionate about and ended up doing something, without a degree and are just fine. Um, it's hard. It's hard for me to have that conversation with my daughter because, like, also on one hand, I'm like, a lot of places look for a
Mhm.
college degree, but on the other hand, like, it's not very useful or it doesn't feel very useful these days.
It's really easy to say as somebody with a professional degree who owns a law firm that a college degree is not important, right?
Yeah.
Mm. There's that. There's number one, employers are actually looking for that credential. And number two, there's the whole social, like everybody else is going to do it, right? And so you are missing out, I think, at 18 on your friend group who all goes off to work. And I don't know that to be 100% honest, I don't know that we would hire a 19-year-old without a college degree to do much other than answer the phones around here, right? You need to learn some more stuff. Um, but if you ask me, like, if I were 18, knowing everything that I know now, and I wasn't going to be a lawyer, would I invest that money in college? No way.
Yeah. Seemed like a lot of people did just fine without it. And if you have like that base of knowledge, and if your network's good or you can build something cool, like sometimes you don't need it. Um, okay, so next question, I guess bringing it back to marketing, although that was an interesting thing to talk about. Um, what is the first thing that lawyers should learn about marketing when they decide to start marketing their practice?
How to get cases.
Oh,
What's the first thing you should learn about marketing? Well, I don't think there is a first thing that everybody should learn, right? You have to have a self-awareness of at your stage in the practice growth, what is the best thing for you to learn? If you are a third year lawyer and you're an associate and you are trying to generate cases on your own, you don't need to know a thing about SEO or YouTube, right? You should do one of two things. You should figure out who are the people in your world that talk to your clients before they come to you, and you should go and network with those people. Or you should be interesting enough on an Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn to be able to generate effectively organic referrals from people that talk to your clients before you do. So that's, if I were a young lawyer inside of a firm as an entrepreneur, that's what I'd be focused on. If you were just launching your firm, and you're in a major market, like SEO probably doesn't matter. You need to have a viable website that doesn't make you look like a buffoon when somebody hears your name and goes searching for you. But I think there it's still about relationship building and relationship maintenance. You would be better off with 10 people who love you, who talk to your clients before you do, who can refer them to you, than you would in a top 10, on a website that ranks slightly outside of the top 10 on Google. So I think, okay, if you ask me what's the first thing, it's like figure out where you are and get a real awareness of what you should spend money and time on next. Cause there's a million shiny objects, but most of them aren't going to do anything but distract you.
yeah. And I think a lot of people reach for a website first when a Google business profile can, help you be visible and help you get clients and cases because these days most people aren't going to the website. Their Google is trying to get people into zero click searches where, your name may pop up, but none of your resources might. And so it's definitely like a changing, landscape where the old, idea that a website is a must have is kind of, I mean, I think websites will still be a must have for a while, but I don't think it's going to be that way for forever for sure.
I think it's a trust clue, right? I don't know. Like, would you hire a lawyer who didn't have a website, who only had a GMB page? This is the equivalent of the Gmail or the AOL address, right?
Yeah, true. True.
So
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be amazing, right? It can be a 7-page website, and you can devote all of your resources to your GMB and to your other assets. Um, Although, I've never gotten a real clear answer to how much of your organic website, um, power affect your ranking on GMB. I assume that they are kind of hand in hand. But you're right. The website is not the thing that I would invest top dollar in right from the jump.
I was talking to a friend not long ago, and I won't go into kind of the details of what they're going through, but it's enough to say they're having a legal issue. And I was asking him questions about how they picked an attorney,
Mm.
and they said, I picked this guy because he looked the most professional. And I kind of prodded a little bit more. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you went to his office and his office looked really nice. And he was like, no, his website looked really professional. And I was like, okay, silly. So ultimately, I found out a friend, picked an attorney based on their website because it looked good. And, it was just a good looking site.
Uh, Right? Um, yeah.
Kind of blows me away if I'm being honest, but that's just 100% how they made their decision.
The strangest part to me, Tiffany, is how many people find us on Google because of our GMB page, call us, talk to my intake and sales person for 12 minutes, and sign a digital retainer that they've looked at for 35 seconds. There's in the auto crash space, there's a subset of clients for whom you're a commodity. And that's why that speed to lead is a thing that we talk about a lot. They don't have the sense really that they could or should research who the best lawyer is. If you can be number one and you can, and by that, I mean the first one who shows up. And if you can just not fumble the ball, there's a good chunk of clients who will hire you just on that without ever having looked at your website. It's shocking as an educated consumer, which you are, but they're out there.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also important, like if you're a business owner, if you're an attorney, you're already kind of in a unique class. That's already like a small portion of the population, where our customers are basically like everyone. A personal injury attorney's customers are literally everyone. And, people don't do nearly as much research as we think they do, or even they think they do. And, they make decisions based on, scant information. And even I've been like caught up in a sales process where I'm like, I have bought in something or I'm ready to buy something. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, do I really want this? But I'm there because like the sales process was just so smooth and so quick. You almost don't have time to think. Which, I mean, you can be kind of a nefarious salesperson and sell a product that's not going to help them or benefit them. But, for most people, they're just trying to get more cases, get more customers. And that's what the other attorneys are doing. That's how the other attorneys are signing so many cases, just signing them quickly.
And then understanding that you've got to build a really nice system for what happens after they've clicked and signed the retainer, right? So you have to reinforce that good buying decision. And we do that by sending out a nice welcome box that has all the things that we would have said in the initial consultation if this was 10 years ago. The things about how your case is evaluated, what you should be doing with your medical bills after the crash, what the steps are in the case. And then we've integrated with Hona to push notifications and frequently asked questions and videos to our clients, depending on what stage of the case that they're in. And we've built out a system in CasePeer where my team has a whole list of tasks. Every time a new case comes in, here's all the things that we do. So we've systematized that so that we don't screw up the first 7 days after the case. And the guy goes, well, I hired a lawyer and then nothing happened. The most common complaint about lawyers is the communication sucks, right? And so if you're really fast and really eager to sign the case up, but then nothing happens for a week, you lose a lot of trust with that client right off the beginning.
It's so funny, like Hona and CasePeer and all these like integrations, like they didn't really exist like not that long ago. Like 2017, we were still figuring out like how do we touch clients like on time manually? How do we like ensure we're keeping up that kind of communication? The new tools are just so great. We mentioned Lead Docket earlier. I love Lead Docket. It's just absolutely fantastic.
When I started here, we were tracking the collection of medical records in a spreadsheet that we would, fill out as red but if we didn't have them, and black when we did, right? And then you looked at the nomenclature in the server, and it was like, I don't know, Ortho Virginia medical records, Ortho Virginia medical records new, Ortho Virginia updated records. It's like, well, and so getting, all of that is part of building a process that's scalable and sustainable past one or two lawyers who are intimately involved in every single case.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been an exciting time with all the AI tools in particular and all the marketing side. There's something new every day and it's just easier to make more, which I just love that.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I technically only have one more question for you. What are you looking forward to in 2025? What are your plans for next year?
Well, my family and I are spending at least 3 weeks and maybe four in Italy in the summer. So one of the things that I drunkenly said at Thanksgiving a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago now, was, "Hey, we're going to spend a month, summer of 2025, in Italy, and you guys should come out," talking to her family or my family, "for a week in the beginning, and the other family should come out for a week in the end, like, get a villa." And so, there's a lot of power in it, like just kind of speaking that stuff into existence, because you put the stake into the ground and you say, here's what we're doing. And then you're embarrassed when you don't do it. Right. It's also, by the way, like how I came to be a marathon runner and an ultra marathoner. I just told people I was doing it. And then, didn't want the social, harm of saying, like I just ran my mouth and I'm not actually doing that. So I'm really excited about that. Um, our team we're switching over to FileLine in 25. I think that's going to give us even better data than CaseBureau has been giving us. And I think it's between the AI integrations that'll come along with that and the data, I think we're going to be able to scale our team and really become a market leader in the Northern Virginia car crash era space.
Well, I guess that's all I had. So thank you so much for coming on today, Brian. I really appreciate you taking the time because I know you're busy. And I'll let you get back to probably one of 100 things you got to be working on. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. That was Brian Glass. And you can learn more about him on, you want to send people to LinkedIn?
Yeah, yeah. LinkedIn is where I'm, for lawyers, like that's the best space to find me. I have a great social media team that's producing what I think are interesting videos on other social. At the Brian Glass is my handle across Instagram and TikTok. But those also end up on LinkedIn, so just find me there.